jobs were in state and local government. Private sector hiring wasn't as strong. It's Marketplace Morning Report from APM, American Public Media.
The Lightner Museum in St. Augustine presents an exhibition from British artist Paul Scott, American Scenery and Souvenirs, Transferware by Paul Scott, opening April 24th and running through October 27th. Details at lightnermuseum.org. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Al Emmerich. On today's First Coast Connect, criminal charges filed against 3 local airport officials. We explain what they're accused of and what it means for the St. Augustine Airport. Then the future of food security. A local hunger relief organization discusses how they're adapting to big changes and economic headwinds. And shopping in the shade, fireworks, and even a pie-eating contest. We preview how Riverside Arts Market is celebrating the 4th of July, plus cleaning up after the party, how you can get involved in picking up at a local park after the patriotic pageantry ends. Join the conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937. Email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or tag us on social. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The House of Representatives is holding the last debate on the multi-trillion-dollar tax cut and spending bill. They spent all night haggling over it. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries has now been speaking for about 4 hours straight on the chamber floor. He's demonstrating his vehement opposition to the measure. NPR's Scott Horsley explains the economic effect the legislation may have.
All the independent scorekeepers say this bill would add between $3 and $5 trillion worth of additional red ink over the next decade. The bill extends most of the tax cuts from the first Trump administration and adds some new tax breaks on top of that. The biggest tax cuts go to the wealthiest taxpayers, while families making less than about $55,000 a year would on average end up worse off under this bill. That's because the tax savings those families would receive would be outweighed by cuts to safety net programs like Medicaid and food stamps.
NPR's Scott Horsley reporting. The Labor Department says employers added 147,000 new jobs in June. It's the latest monthly snapshot of U.S. employment. The unemployment rate fell 0.1% last month to 4.1%. The Justice Department has made a new hire, a former FBI agent who was charged with aiding and abetting the assault on police during the January 6th attack. NPR's Tom Dreisbach reports.
Jared Wise urged rioters to kill police during the January 6th attack, saying, "Kill them," as they were being assaulted. Wise pleaded not guilty to multiple charges, and his trial was ongoing when President Trump took office and issued mass pardons to the January 6th Capitol attack defendants. Now, Wise is working for the department that prosecuted him. The Justice Department did not comment on his precise role, but the New York Times reported he is working on what is called the Weaponization Working Group. During the Capitol riot, 140 police officers were injured, some severely. Trump argues the defendants were mistreated. Tom Dreisbach, NPR News.
The man charged with killing 4 students at the University of Idaho has pleaded guilty to the slayings. These occurred at a home near campus in November 2022. For Northwest Public Broadcasting, Lauren Patterson reports that Brian Kohberger is expected to spend the rest of his life in prison for the fatal stabbings.
The families of the victims, reporters, and police packed the courtroom. Kohberger accepted a plea deal agreeing to 4 consecutive life terms for the murders of Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, and 10 years for a burglary charge, waiving his right to appeal. Judge Hippler asked Kohberger if he was admitting to the charges.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
A sentencing hearing has been scheduled for July 23rd. For NPR News, I'm Lauren Patterson in Boise.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Stephen Ponson. It is now 9:04. Adams and Forsyth streets in downtown Jacksonville between Jefferson and Liberty Streets are no longer one way. The roadways made the permanent change to two-way traffic yesterday. Public Works Director Nina Sickler says the goal is to make downtown more pedestrian, traffic, and business-friendly, although it may take some time getting used to.
I believe there will be some learning curve, but essentially having them as two-way makes it safer, because if you do turn down the street and you have the option of being in either direction, you're not finding yourself in a situation where you are turning on a road that doesn't accommodate the direction that you're driving.
The work was done via a $4.5 million contract approved back in late 2023. Two more one-way streets in downtown Jacksonville could become two-way streets in the future. The net worth of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has grown to more than $2 million, largely due to earnings from his 2023 book, written before his failed 2024 presidential run. New financial disclosure forms show DeSantis received $625,000 last year from publisher HarperCollins, the same as in 2023. His only other income was his governor's salary. Meanwhile, Ag Commissioner Wilton Simpson net worth rose to nearly $20 million, boosted by a multi-million-dollar money market account. There was no report available for the only other active member of the Florida cabinet, Attorney General James Uthmire. Off and on rain through the weekend in northeast Florida, highs in the upper 80s to lower 90s.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Viking, dedicated to creating travel experiences for the thinking person, with programs designed for cultural enrichment on board and on shore. Learn more at Viking.com. This is NPR.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning. I'm Al Emmerich in for Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Well, today, a criminal probe of St. Augustine's Airport Authority resulted in charges for 3 of its board members. We're going to talk about that very shortly, and then how a Florida food bank is pushing through uncertainty as food insecurity in the region rises. There's lots to talk about on this, the day before July 4th. If you're numerically challenged at times like I am, that would be Thursday, July 3rd. But first, what began as an ethics complaint by the St. Johns County Airport Authority Board's attorney has actually turned into potential fines, even jail time for board members accused of violating sunshine laws, and in one case, actually witness tampering. Noah Hertz, Jacksonville Today reporter focusing on St. Johns County, has been covering the story and joins me here. Good morning, Noah.
Good morning, Al. Thanks for having me.
You ready for a big July 4th?
I am ready for a calm July 4th, so well, with any luck.
Well, you talk about fireworks and stuff blowing up, man. Let me first just tell you, I grew up in St. Augustine. I remember when the airport was just this little piddly thing. And if you don't realize, the airport is a major hub and tons of activity in our region. And so for those that aren't even aware that the St. Augustine Airport is this really thriving, active hub, it is. And so now you've been following this story since the end of February when the board's legal counsel resigned. Catch us up from 20,000 feet. I know we're going to dig into this, right?
Yeah.
So for those that may not be fully aware, what's going on?
So, like you said, a lot of people don't realize that the St. Augustine Airport, which is... It's now called the St. Augustine Airport, but if you drive past it on on US 1, the sign still says the Northeast Florida Regional Airport because that's what it was recently called. They had their name changed. They've had their name changed like 3 or 4 times in the past couple decades. It's a whole thing. But the St. Augustine Airport is, since it's publicly owned, is overseen by a board of elected officials, the St. Johns County Airport Authority. Now, those elected officials are, like everybody else, every other elected official in the state of Florida, bound by what is called sunshine law, which says that if there is something that is going to be discussed in front of the public, whether that could be anything from what the budget of the airport is, to policy changes, to just about anything that might appear in a public meeting, you are legally not allowed to discuss those things in private. Now, like you said, end of February, this all started when the board's legal counsel, which is an attorney by the name of Jeremiah Blocker, who's with a firm called the Douglas Law Firm. And they're not nobody in the region. Blocker he's a known guy. Douglas is a known law firm. This isn't like something run out of somebody's garage. This is a legitimate attorney's office.
Mm-hmm.
They abruptly announced via a letter to the airport authority, look, we cannot work with you guys anymore. The legal counsel, let me back up again too. The legal counsel are at a public meeting when you go, there is just about always an attorney who sits up at the board with the rest of the elected officials to kind of explain to them as they go, hey, by the way, this is what the law says. When you're making a motion, hey, this is the way you have to make a motion, just to kind of keep them in line.
Sure, yeah.
And so Blocker and his law firm, they send in this letter that says, look, we can't work with you anymore because multiple members of the Airport Authority Board are knowingly violating the law when it comes to having private meetings. And so this blew up. This explodes. They had a meeting just a couple of weeks after this letter comes out. And, of the 5 members of the board, 2 of them were accused by name of knowingly violating Sunshine Law. That's Reba Ludlow and Len Tucker. And Ludlow repeatedly said, look, these are unsubstantiated rumors. Just because you point at somebody and say you're violating the law, if you don't have any evidence, that's not anything.
I'm going to ask you to pause for a minute.
Please. Because
this, I know for a fact, having worked in news earlier in my career as well, there is media training that occurs. This information, sunshine laws. So explain this. This really isn't an oops, I didn't know, is it?
Yeah. When you get elected, you do have to take trainings to make sure that you are aware of what the law says. And when I say sunshine law, that is a really, really broad category of Florida's public-private meeting law. If I'm an elected official and someone emails, if you were to send an email tomorrow to all 5 of the members of the airport authority that says, hey guys, how's it going? And one of them replied all to that email, i.e. they sent an email that CC'd the other members of the board, that would technically count as a sunshine law violation because it would be a discussion that occurred in private over email that was supposed to happen in public. Now, that's kind of an exaggeration because they probably wouldn't discuss saying hello to Al on a public meeting agenda. But,
the point is well taken.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you emailed them about policy and they emailed back, that's a sunshine law violation. But that could often be an unintentional violation.
These are egregious, though.
Yes.
Because we're talking about closed-door meetings.
Yes.
A parking lot meeting at an Irish pub.
Yes.
Tucker arriving in a car that wasn't his own.
Yeah.
Alleged witness tampering. This reads like a dun-dun-dun crime drama.
Yes.
But these are all actively engaged in this activity, which is what's led to where we are today, right?
And that's what a number of employees of the airport have alleged, including several past people who have run the airport. The bulk of the investigation's testimony comes from the current interim executive director, a man by the name of Courtney Pittman, who told state investigators that he was a part of a lot of these one-on-one meetings, or not one-on-one, but a lot of these meetings that should have happened in public. He initially told them, hey, look, you got to get out of here. This is a sunshine law violation. We can't be having these meetings. But the way he frames things is that this was happening so frequently that it reached a point where he quit telling them to leave the room because he knew they knew that. These meetings, they would talk about anything from what was going to be on the agenda for the next meeting, at times pressuring Pittman to remove items from the agenda that they didn't want to discuss. They would talk about policy changes that they wanted to see. A big one was about FAA mandated inspections of the hangars that tenants can rent at the airport.
Yeah.
Several of the board members really wanted those inspections to stop happening. And when Pittman said, look, I signed paperwork, Pittman says, He says he told them when he signed paperwork that said he was going to follow FAA regulations, he alleges that one of the authority members just kind of said, all that's going to happen is you'll get a fine and a slap on the wrist if we violate this. It's not a big deal.
So how did the state attorney get involved? What was that point?
That was so the state attorney did get involved when the law firm quit. This all blew up, like I said, really quickly. When they had their early March meeting about this, there was a shift in the room that was really interesting where initially they were just talking about, what might happen. Oh, he made these allegations. We need to just move on. We need a new legal counsel. To several people who are in the room pointing out, look, a state investigation is probably coming if it has not already started. And then the discussion shifts to, okay, who's going to retain private attorneys? What is the etiquette for handling this? Do we call ahead to the administration building just to make sure that state investigators aren't there interviewing somebody? So it all happened pretty quickly there. But I will note that it happened pretty quickly from the outside looking in. I would wager that, and based on the testimony we saw, this has been going on since quite a while before late February. Action News did a really good job breaking this when it was first happening, but at the start, it kind of seemed like it happened really fast.
Well, as you're unpacking this, we have Susan from Mandarin on line 1 here with us today. And Susan, tell us your question.
Yes. Who pays these people who broke the sunshine laws? Who pays their attorney's fees as they're being charged with these things? Because a similar thing happened at the school board on July 1st. Dr. Bernier, the superintendent, said that the Office of General Counsel in Jacksonville has to defend people even if they know they were guilty of sin, which seems like an absurd thing. Either I misunderstood or he's just telling an untruth to try to get a bad bill passed. So when somebody that they're wrong, the city doesn't have to defend them, do they?
Great question, Susan. Thank you so much.
I will say that there's a couple things I want to unpack there. First is that since this is a public county board, the money that they have to spend, doesn't just come out of thin air. It comes from activity that the airport does. It comes from revenue that comes in like that. It comes from a little bit of tax revenue, property tax revenue. But another thing I want to point out too is that we are still a little early to say we know anybody is guilty. The accusations are definitely explosive, but they are currently just that. They are accusations that state investigators receive from, like I said, a number of airport authority or airport employees. But, I spoke with, of the 3 who were charged, I did my due diligence and I called all 3 of them, and 2 of them said they weren't able to speak. But the third one, Dennis Clarke, did have a conversation with me on the phone yesterday. And he said he maintains that this is all unsubstantiated rumors. So there will have to be a trial. There will have to be a discovery period and a back and forth about this. But just because it is explosive and there are individuals who have shared a lot in testimony, we don't know for sure that they're guilty yet.
What's on the line here for these defendants?
It's tricky. Florida law kind of draws a bit of a line, like I said, between unintentional and intentional sunshine law violations. Assuming, that's a bad way to start this, if what the accusations argue is found to be true, then these are not unintentional. These are very intentional violations. And if that's the case, we're looking at a $500 fine, possible jail time, or even removal from office. 2 of the 2 board members who are not being charged by the state have already called for resignations by these 3, saying, look, the only way we can restore public trust in this board is by, whether you guys are found guilty or not, getting you off this board. Because there was a moment during, I believe it was their March meeting, where Jennifer Leota, one of the board members who is not being charged here, made a motion to undergo, an internal investigation into all of this to find whether there was wrongdoing at the internal level as well. And that was voted down, including by the board chair, Ms. Ludlow, who did not recuse herself, despite, one could argue, a possible issue there with voting on whether to investigate things you have been accused of.
Gotcha. All right. We've got gentleman online, Mark from St. Augustine. Mark, thanks for joining us. What's your thoughts and question today?
You're welcome. First off, in the name of growth control, St. Augustine doesn't want any more Jacksonville people down here, so just stay away. Come down here for a day, spend your money, and then leave. We've got far too many people here. Stay away. But what I wanted you're laughing, but I know you agree with me.
I grew up in St. Augustine, Mark. I remember a time when I was like, hey, can we have a few more people down here? Come on, the mall needs you. So go ahead, man. Go ahead. Lay it on us.
Well, I want to say, we're talking about St. Augustine, and that's, of course, egregious. Power corrupts, absolutely, I guess. But this goes on in Jacksonville all of the time, probably on a daily basis, especially when the Jaguars are involved. All these city council people have free tickets to go to sit in the skybox with Shad Khan and all his lieutenants, and they're not just talking about the weather. And this
Right.
is going. And they go to his private yacht, and they're not. They're talking about business and deals, and this is going on while they were negotiating the Stadium of the Future, and I'm sorry, but you're not allowed to do that. Don't go to these games. Don't go put yourself in that position. But like I said, it goes on in Jacksonville times 10 what is going on in St. Augustine.
All right, Mark, thank you for your opinion. Appreciate that. Obviously those are Mark's thoughts and expressions and ideas, and we watch TV shows, and we don't live in a cloud of complete darkness. Networking is networking, but Noah, you're a news reporter. You're in the know as it relates to what's happening, not just in St. Johns County. You are in county commission rooms and yada, yada, yada. I mean, this really is a challenge when it comes to the Sunshine Law, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's a fine line.
It really is, yeah. And I know, especially when you look at somebody like at the Airport Authority, Reba Ludlow and Len Tucker have been friends. She told me they've been friends for 30 years.
Yeah.
Now you've been somebody you've been friends with for almost 40 years. You have to draw that line in the sand that says, all right, look, if I come over for dinner, we can't talk about this because it's potentially violating the law. And there's a very real argument to be made that you signed up for this. You were elected. That's what you signed up for. But it's true. It can be tricky to navigate this new world some people are thrown into of what am I allowed to talk about with people who are in the room with me. And that was one of the allegations that was made by a former interim executive director of the airport, was that, sometimes you get to these meetings and it seemed as if the votes were predetermined. And that is a point where the public is really impacted by potential Sunshine Law violations, because the way these meetings are supposed to work is that the public can attend them and the elected officials hash it out there in the public eye. The public can then get up and comment and provide their own thoughts and their own opinions. And it's really local individuals, people who voted, people whose tax dollars go towards these things, who are impacted when a board gets up there and says, we have no comment, I motion to do this. And, people are impacted by that. It means that they have less of an impact in their government when elected officials do things like this.
Thanks for the roundabout on that. Just close this out. What is the next that the public should be paying attention to? And before we actually answer that, I might add, what a great thing you just dropped on us. And that was, if you're not a person who has ever attended a city council meeting or attended these types of meetings, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not as cool as sitting and watching Netflix or, Amazon Prime or whatever your choice is.
That, yeah.
Okay. But it does give you purview into how that process works. So what's next, and what should we look out for?
I would say the next steps are going to be a trial about all of this. I would say another really interesting thing to look out for is what the Airport Authority board does going forward now with this.
Yeah.
Whether members will resign, whether members will recuse themselves. There's even a possibility under Florida law that past decisions they've made, if evidence is found to be true that they discussed things in private, has to be potentially overturned. That could all be really interesting. But, another thing I would encourage people to is to remember that if you do pay attention to the local government, and I can say this because it's my job to go to these meetings and to pay attention to what these people are doing, it's really easy to assume that all the interesting stuff is happening at the county government, the city government, or the school board. But there are a lot of other boards. I mean, I was on the show a couple months ago talking about the mosquito control district in St. Johns County. There are a lot of little boards, and they're all elected officials, and they're all doing really important stuff, whether it seems small or not. So it's good to pay attention to these things or keep tabs on them, even when there aren't allegations that they're breaking laws. I will say that.
All right. Noah Hertz, You bring it all the time, sir.
I appreciate it. Thank
Thank
you, Al.
you for your wonderful reporting and keeping us up to date. Up next, a hunger relief organization embraces resiliency as it navigates economic headwinds. We're going to talk to the CEO, executive director. I don't know, is it possible to say head cheese for an organization that leads food distribution? Susan King will join us. She is a terrific, terrific individual, and we'll learn more from her as we return to First Coast Connect. Good morning and welcome back to First Coast Connect. With me now in the studios is Susan King, the CEO, executive. I want to get the title officially. I mean, you have such a storied history in this community as it relates to food insecurity. So what is the official title, Sang?
Officially President and CEO.
President and CEO. Then I will address you like this, President and CEO. Susan King, what a glorious organization Feeding Northeast Florida is. Give us for those that are listening today that may be familiar or not, give us the elevator pitch of the organization.
Feeding Northeast Florida is the regional food bank serving 12 counties in Northeast Florida and North Central, all the way to the Gulf Coast and Levy County. We serve, that's about 8,300 miles. Wow. And yeah, it's a big area, the size of New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah, give it some perspective. And we serve approximately 310,000 food insecure people in that community.
So real quickly, before we dive into some of the challenges and exciting things that are happening, I know that one of the confusions, I did a tour with you, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 months ago. What an amazing facility, by the way. We'll spend some time talking about that. But a lot of people don't realize the connections because they hear, oh, there's this food bank in my community, or this has this. Of course, you've got Beam out at the beaches and doing amazing work with Jeff Winkler and his team. What is the relationship that you have as it relates to all of these other resources?
So as the regional food bank, we are a Feeding America affiliate, and we have about 495 partnerships programs. Those can be things that range from a Sulzbacher or a City Rescue or a Beam all the way to pantries in schools, small church organizations that run pantry operations. So it's everything in between. And we're technically the food supply for all of those organizations. I mean, they sometimes have some supporting food assistance, but we are the provider of food to the tune of about 36 million pounds last year in our service area. It's mind-boggling. But we are at our heart a logistics and distribution business. We're trucks and drivers and routes and relationships with retailers and manufacturers. And we get food from where it is to where it needs to go.
I would highly encourage you, if you are part of an organization, a community organization, a company, a business, to go pay a visit to this facility. It will blow your mind. And I'm not giving some overblown, hoopah here. No, I mean, to see the vast amount of food, the trucks, the process, the operation, the technology that's at play, and then the vast number of individuals every day who are volunteers helping you move the progress along. It's just staggering. So that's my plug because I'm a fan. So
well, thank you so much.
So speaking about being a fan, there is a challenge that you all are facing, obviously, as many are facing, as Trump's bill has made it through the Senate Tuesday. All eyes are on the House, and there's a lot of concern about the SNAP cuts, how that's going to affect and the hunger crisis that's in America. So give us an understanding as it relates to you, this region. what is on the line here, and what do people need to know from your perspective?
Well, I'll start with what we do know. So, when the new administration came into office, they said they cut some funding through the Commodities Credit Corp, which was funds that came through the USDA and their TFAP program. TFAP still exists, supports commodity support for farmers and producers, but we lost funding there, which for us directly was about $850,000 worth of proteins primarily that we had anticipated and had planned for. So that was one thing. That's something that truly happened. There's another program where we buy from small, minority, disenfranchised farmers and pay them a fair price. It's another USDA program that's been around for a couple of years, which will end in August. That was about $1 billion worth of commodities purchase dollars nationally. Our percentage was about 1.2 million. So that goes away in August, and we will have no future funding in that. Those are the two big things that we've felt so far. That said, we still are getting TFAP funding, and the other programs seem to be maintaining. When we look at something like the potential cut to SNAP, that is a program that we can't even nationally as an organization make up for. $1 from us, one meal from us is equal to 9 meals through a SNAP program. I mean, it's a highly efficient way to provide food assistance to food insecure people. Because imagine that they don't have to have trucks and drivers, and we create this whole infrastructure for the charity food system that SNAP is literally just taking that card to a grocery store.
Yeah, and can you just give us that explanation, SNAP? Because there's a lot of people who don't know what SNAP is.
So SNAP is the old food stamp program, the
Right.
Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and it looks like an ordinary debit card, and those benefits are go directly to that household, and so you use them in the grocery store like anybody else. It's limited in terms of what you can use it for.
Yeah.
Some categories that are off limits, but it's a very dignified way to get assistance to people.
And I don't think, if you've never been food insecure, I remember when I was very young, I was living in Phoenix, Arizona, and my mom and we had to use this, and it was embarrassing. And I remember she had that feeling of shame. And so we can't disassemble the connection of shame, food insecurity. And so with that in mind, the need is so high. When we think about food insecurity here in Northeast Florida, what contributes to the rise and is contributing?
Well, we started feeling the effects in COVID, and post-COVID, we've seen such impacts to rent increases that never went down, the cost of food, all of the things that we see every day.
Mhm.
That just the people that we serve tend to be paycheck to paycheck. They're working families who hit a speed bump. It might be a car repair. It might be an illness, just a multitude of things, a rent increase, and suddenly they need some assistance. That's the bulk of who we are helping. We have seen a 17% increase in the demand for food assistance, the need for food assistance over last year in our organization alone.
It is. I would imagine that's a stark increase in comparison to previous years.
It is a significant increase when at the same time we are looking at reductions in the food supply, whether it be coming from the federal programs or, some things just are efficiencies that are created by need and demand. And what we saw in COVID is that our retail partners got really good at managing their inventory, so there was less waste, less of what goes into the charity food system. So it's this confluence of factors that make this a kind of uncertain and challenging time. That said, I don't want to be that person that cries wolf, in that I know that this community supports organizations like ours. I know that they step up when it's a hurricane or what we saw during COVID, and we're going to find the same thing through this. We're going to find a way to support and the food insecurity in our community.
That is something that is so important, that mental mindset, just as we as individuals have to continue in hard times as well as good times, remember to remain positive, optimistic, to work hard, to be resourceful. But I also know that you must face a constant challenge of crisis fatigue.
We do. Like anybody living with uncertainty, it is challenging because it requires us to be very nimble and creative and innovative and open to whatever comes next. I will say that when we looked at COVID and the challenges of COVID, it was almost a situation of abundance in terms of donations of food and support with big government programs that helped provide food for us to meet those needs. I think we're going to be facing the opposite here, is that it's going to be a challenge of equitable distribution of reduced resources. And so we'll rely on the community to come help and step in, and they always do. And I think our role right now in a time of uncertainty is to make sure that we're providing the accurate information about what we know and about what we see. Because nobody wants people to be hungry.
Well, and I think you speak to the nemesis of so much of reacting versus responding, which is to see a headline, not read below the headline and know what's really going on. And, one of the reasons, the blessings of this station, this show, and interviewing folks like you is it brings that awareness to going deeper below the headline. So if you'd like to go deeper below the headline with us, feel free. You can join the conversation with Susan King. You can call us at 904-549-2937. Also, you can email us your question at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. So, Susan, let's talk about some of the common myths about individuals and families food banks serve, because those challenges are real, but there is a definitive line and perception about the persona of folks. And I know that's got to be totally wrong.
Well, it really is. As I mentioned, we support some agencies that provide services for homeless, like Sulzbacher and Trinity Rescue, but that's a tiny portion of who we're supporting out there. It's really primarily working families. We survey our agencies all the time. We know who they're dealing with, and it's just people who hit, as I always refer to them, as speed bumps. They're not poor choices in life. They are just things that sometimes we can't overcome without a little help.
And the process, people can come to you once or repeatedly, right? I mean, a lot of folks don't understand, like, oh, well, if I go get services, then I'm in the loop. But that's not true, is it?
No, and back to the point of the food bank is really this logistics warehouse distribution business. We're supporting these agencies that are the boots on the ground. We are supporting the beam that is providing rent and utility assistance to keep people in their homes, in addition to supporting them with food assistance. So, and every one of these agencies has a different plan. They're individual organizations, nonprofits with their own missions. We provide the food support to them. So, I can't speak broadly to everybody, because it's really meeting people where they are at the organizational level.
You have a long storied history in this region, which we could do an entire show on itself. You're not just the leader of this organization. You're also a practitioner of food production, food insecurity. And so knowing that and knowing what you lead in the organization, how are you looking ahead strategically, and what tactically is the organization doing, knowing, hey, these cuts could be coming any minute?
Well, we're always looking for alternate food sourcing. Our Feeding Florida is our association of food banks here, 9 food banks that cover all 67 counties, of which we're very proud to be a part of. And they work very hard to get funding through the state for a program specifically that we've been doing over the last few years that purchases produce from farmers in the state of Florida that might otherwise be plowed under. So we work programmatically with those kinds of things, looking for alternate sources, and always looking with an eye towards, it has to be a win-win. And in this case, supporting Florida farmers and the food going into the charitable system is an example of those kind of really great wins. But some of the things that we're doing internally is we're getting ready. Actually, we're starting today construction on a large production kitchen in our new warehouse facility. That we know that generationally people that we serve often don't know how to cook. It will be a workforce development program there where we will be training people to go out and work in institutional kind of settings, large production kitchens. But importantly, it will provide disaster recovery opportunities for us for hot meals. It will also allow us to provide healthy, nutritious meals to some of the agencies that we serve. Imagine we did this during COVID, but the ability to provide a senior that's living in a subsidized housing facility who has a kitchenette, doesn't have congregate feeding on site, to be able to give them healthy, nutritious meals is really powerful and is actually nutritionally transformational for them. So we're putting in a production garden so that now that in our new facility we can host children and field trips, that we can show people how food is grown and what's growing in Florida. The food that we're distributing, this is what it really looks like. My past history, having some experience in farming, I realized that when people see how food is grown, they appreciate so much more what they receive from us. That's Florida grown produce. It's just a powerful connection. So.
Well, and in so many cases, the excuse for us that aren't food insecure is like, oh, I don't have time. And in actuality, the research shows your food lasts longer and you actually takes less time in many cases if you're preparing that fresh food. So you're helping somebody in multiple ways. And I would be remiss if I didn't say not only is your production kitchen being built, but the space that you have. Tell us about that for organizations to be able to host events.
We are just so fortunate in this renovation that we did of the old Kinko window factory. It's about 110,000 square foot facility, and we designed it with an education center that we make available to community groups to meet. It's got great technology in it. We also have an event space that can house groups in an auditorium style for probably up to 200 and maybe 150 for a seated event. It will also be utilized as part of our production kitchen, and it'll be our packing area. Everything's multi-purpose in a food bank. But just the ability to have the space to not just accommodate our organization, but we really want to be that regional food bank. We want to be this community's food bank. And so nothing gives me greater joy than when I see groups who volunteer with us and then host a meeting in our facility, people coming and going to the tune of about 16,000 volunteers last year. I mean, we really want this to be kind of an open door for community members to see that it is your community food bank.
Wow. What a great story. That is good. And again, this will be the last plug, I swear. And no, I mean, when you see something that's really neat and it's in your backyard, not to mention the building is neat. I mean, the building is cool. If you're into architecture, it's a great visit. You all received a $750,000 grant from Walmart and Feeding America as part of a multi-year partnership. For those that may have heard that in the news, separate from all the other things we're talking about. So put that in perspective, and also what good is going to come of that?
Well, this is this is the third round of this grant, and we were very fortunate to be one of the food banks selected this year for this grant. It is a partnership with Walmart and Feeding America to try to get more donations through our retail partners. Not necessarily that they will be donating more, but that we will actively be picking up when it's available.
Sure.
So that's one aspect of it. But these dollars, the first 500,000 of it is specifically designated for enhancement of our existing partnerships or development of rural partnerships. This is capacity building dollars. It doesn't benefit us directly, but it allows us to buy trucks or add cold storage. And so it's a pass through, but I mean, what an extraordinary opportunity. $250,000 of that is designated for us to potentially, and I say potentially because it's not a done deal yet, to open a food pantry under the Feeding Northeast floor where we will have direct contact with clients. We're going to operate this as a best practice model so that when we train our agency partners, when we are shopping with clients, it'll be a client choice pantry, and we really are looking to use national best practices in this facility. So
This is incredible. I imprint upon you the concept of one up. That is, hey, one level up from the thing you do today to the next. And that is exactly what you're doing. Susan, thank you for being here today.
thank you for having me.
You are welcome. Up next, Riverside Arts Market is ramping up for the holiday. We'll talk about what's happening downtown. Learn how you can have a, blast. Okay, I said it. Oh, you gotta love it. Magic pie, lights in the sky, it's all going on. But down at the Riverside Arts Market, it's the annual fireworks watch party. And here to talk about checking it all out is Chloe Kuhn, director of Riverside Arts Market. Chloe, welcome here.
Thank you. We are super excited to be on the show today.
Well, thank you for taking a few minutes on the day before the big blast. First of all, tell us real high level about the event details. What's going on?
Absolutely. So, a lot of people are really familiar with the Riverside Arts Market as a Saturday program, but for the 4th, we do something a little special. We know people are coming downtown to watch the fireworks, so we like to give them something fun to do while they're waiting for that big show. So, we have food trucks, music, activities. We really try to make it a great time down under the bridge.
That is terrific. So speaking about down under the bridge, how long did it take to put this all together, and what are the preparations looking like?
Oh, yeah. So we start planning months in advance. But for us specifically, it's all about coordinating with the vendors, coordinating with the city, making sure everything is in place so that it can be a really seamless experience. And then for us on the day of, we're going to be down there bright and early in the morning. It's a parking lot throughout the week, so we have a lot of work to do to transform it into a fun community space.
A lot of people say, oh man, I want to do that, but the parking. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so if you've been to Ram on a Saturday, I get it. The parking can sometimes be a battle, but because on the 4th of July, we don't use quite the entire location, we're kind of on a reduced footprint. That means we have parking on site, which is kind of a real treat for our regular Ram visitors. So there is parking available right underneath the bridge, as well as a lot of your favorite neighborhood parking spots too.
And if you really think about it, wherever you go on July 4th, you're going to walk. I mean, unless you're sitting in your backyard.
Absolutely, yeah.
And, so far the weather looks, moderately good.
It's going to be nice.
Yeah.
It's been a rainy week, but it's looking like the skies are going to clear just in time. Should be a really beautiful evening.
I'm glad you said that because I didn't want to be the person that hexed it, just in case there's some superstitious.
I'll knock on wood the second I get to some.
Tell us about the itinerary. What's going on time-wise?
Yeah, so we're kicking things off with a magic show. So this is our second year doing the Conjurer of Cheap Tricks. He's going to be doing some really fun, family-friendly magic. We also have a pie eating contest. So mixed fillings, one of our favorites and one of the neighborhood's favorites as well, helps us out with a pie eating contest, which is a lot of fun. We did it last year too, and there are some really funny videos out there if you're so inclined. And then the Groove Coalition is going to be taking us all the way up to when those fireworks start to go off with some of your favorite songs. Their R&B group, they're really great for dancing. So it's going to be a really nice time.
I'm a type 1 diabetic, so I will bring extra insulin.
There you
go. my pump will be texting me beforehand. Don't enter the competition, Al. Hey, are pets allowed? And other than that, what should people bring too?
Yeah, please bring your pets. We are dog friendly. We also see cats, birds, snakes, lizards. People bring all sorts of pets down to Ram, and we love it. So please feel free. As long as your pet is, okay with the fireworks, it can be kind of a loud experience. But even we see people come down and enjoy, and then go home for the loud portion of the night. But as far as other things to bring, we've seen people bring chairs that they set up around the river walk.
Sure.
bring anything that you might like to have with you for the whole night, and also bring your wallet, because we have a lot of small businesses that are really excited about having our shoppers come and enjoy their food and beverages.
Okay. All right. So, just Curtis from the North Side, thank you. Reminder to people that it is against the law to discharge a weapon in city limits, and it's the fireworks and 4th of July, not the your weapon display.
Yes.
And so, obviously, we want to be safe. I know you've put safety at a premium, correct?
Yeah, it's very important to us. So anytime we have arts market on Saturday, or even special evening events like this, we do have JFRD on site. We have JSO on site. We have additional security officers as well.
Right.
It's something we take very seriously. It's important to us.
So you're still going to have your next Saturday. So there's the event, and then Saturday the 5th. So make sure you come on out there. And, hey, Chloe, thank you for being
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you for the wonderful community service. And you know what? Speaking about community service, when we return, we're going to talk about a preservation group that wants you on their post-party cleanup crew. And you will, have a blast. I know. I did it. Sorry.
I'm Scott Tong. President Trump wants to build new cities from scratch on federal land with little to no government interference. The idea is called Freedom Cities, exempt from labor, environmental, and tax laws, and focused on high-tech innovation. And you know what? Tech companies want in. Next time in Here and Now.
Today at 1 on WJCT News 89.9.
On the next Fresh Air, life as a failed child star. We talk with Tamara Yahia about growing up in Argentina. At 11, performing an imitation of Madonna, becoming a popular singer and dancer, and later realizing she was sexualized as a child. In her memoir, she also writes about immigrating with her family to California and nearly getting deported. Join us.
Today at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
Why do some of us trust our guts when making decisions? Is it a skill that needs to be developed?
Intuition is fundamental to our intelligence, I think way more than people often realize. It's directing the way that we experience our place in the world and the way that we react, act, and perceive.
I'm Deborah Becker, The Power of Intuition. That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11 on WJCT News 89.9.
Americans consume more than 2 or 3 times the recommended daily amount of sugar. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. claimed sugar was poison. For our next installment of our series, In Good Health, we revisit our show on the health effects of sugar with the experts. That's next time on 1A.
Today starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back to First Coast Connect. I'm Al Emmerich in for Ann Schindler today. And a local nonprofit is lending Hannah Park a hand by hosting a post-Spark cleanup this Sunday. And here to talk about all that is Felicia Boyd, the Timaquan Parks Foundation Project and Outreach Director. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Every time I see you, wherever you are in the community, you are filled with bright energy and also the best tan ever because you're always outside doing wonderful stuff. There's not enough time in the show to alliterate all of your accomplishments, but just to give a background here, because we're going to talk about 2 things, what people can do post-party, but also this wonderful Timaquan project. Professional geologist, retired UNF professor, owner of an environmental consulting business, but for the past 13 years been the program and outreach director at Timaquan Parks Foundation. And there's so much behind there. What, real briefly, led you to this field that you're in?
Oh, I just love being outdoors. And so that working for Timaquan Parks Foundation is kind of a dream job. It's kind of my retirement job. And just being able to go into these wilderness parks that we have in these outdoor spaces and work with wonderful people, wonderful volunteers.
It always shocks me still how many people, after having lived in this area for over 40 plus years, how many people I know who have never been to a park and, or don't go as frequently. But a lot of people volunteer. And so you have this event coming up where it's this big cleanup. Tell us about that.
So this is, our environmental stewardship is something that we do for our 3 park partners, our national, state, and city park partners. And it's an opportunity to get the whole community out to one of these parks. And once they see one, then we can introduce them to some of these other parks. And so we work with little kids and young professionals and retirees. And so this particular cleanup is for our city park partner, Jack's Parks at Hanna Park. And of course, there's kind of always a mess after the 4th of July. And so this is a regular annual cleanup that we do, and it brings out many people from the community.
How many people are you looking for?
As many that want to come, and they can be little kids, they can be old, they can be in between, families.
One times many, because think about it. You want to do good, but do you really want to pick up the trash? Probably not. But if you bring extra people with you, it gets done faster, right?
Exactly. And the perk for this is that once you're in the park, if you pick up trash for a couple hours, then you can stay at Hanna Park the rest of the day.
All right, so you've got this beautiful array behind you. I don't know if the studio can pick it up. We can get a few of the things. Feel free to hold them, but give us the lookout here. What is this kit?
So some of the things that we will provide for you are gloves and bags. We have some grabbers, and we'll have some snacks and some extra water. We ask you to wear closed-toed shoes. I would suggest wearing a hat, maybe some bug spray, definitely sunscreen, and your own full reusable water bottle.
Bring water. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. And so this is at Catherine Abbey Hanna Park, Sunday, July 6th. It's from 8 to 10 a.m. Hey, it's only 2 hours. You can work off whatever July 4th gave you and the day after gave you. See how I did that? Inform the gate attendant you're there for the TPF volunteer cleanup. And by the way, TPF, tell us about that.
So Timucuan Parks Foundation, we're the support organization for the national, state, and city parks. As most people know, Jacksonville has the largest urban park system in the United States. We'll support our park partners for any parks, but mostly we focus on what we call our wilderness parks. Low impact parks where you can go hiking, biking, boating, fishing, kayaking, canoeing, bird watching, yoga, camping, places to go refresh mentally and physically.
I know a lot of people say, I want to go do that. That would be so cool. And then they go, oh, but there's all this work, or I got to do this. What do people need to realize about the simplicity of experiencing the parks?
So, except, Hanna and the state parks and Huguenot are $5. All the other parks are free. You drive up, you park, you get out, and you take a walk in the woods, or you let your kids run down the path. You sit and watch the clouds go by. And so they're just really a great family resource and a place to get healthy and a place to just enjoy.
One of the best quotes I ever heard was a friend of mine and I were hiking, and she said to me, you never meet a mean person walking in a park,
Yeah. Well, and sometimes people don't know what to do. And so we do a lot of programming, mostly for what we call non-traditional audiences. We have programs for urban kids and women and seniors and military families, where we take groups out to do kayaking or junior ranger angler fishing or hiking history, so different ways to experience the park.
I want to thank you so much. You've got the cleanup again. Where they need to go for the cleanup?
They need to go to Catherine Abbey Hanna Park, 500 Wonderwood. Just go up to the front gate, tell them you're there for the cleanup, and they'll send you to parking lot 11.
Bring your water, bring some bug spray. They've got some cool stuff, but make sure you cover your dome, because if you look like me, you definitely need some sunblock. A lot of it, and bug spray, and all that kind of other stuff. Felicia Boyd, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Al.
Well, I hate to say this, but that's our program. Thanks for listening. If you have feedback or suggestions, you can send them to either First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. Give us a ring. If you missed anything, catch the rebroadcast. It's 8 o'clock tonight. You can also see our entire archive, WJCT.org. The executive producer of First Coast Connect is David Luckin. Produced by Stacy Bennett. Directed by Brady the Man Quorum. Our theme music performed by Club de Belugas. I always mess that up. We're off tomorrow, the 4th, but you can join us on Monday. Yeah, I'll be here punning it out with you. And Dr. Joe Servin talks Pharaoh's curse fungus, AI brain rot, and takes your calls. What? Come on, that's blowing up. I'm Al Emmerich, and you've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
More than a century ago, a company called Calum helped Jacksonville become the winter film capital of the world, a reputation that lasted only a decade. Hear the fascinating true story on Bygone Jacks, Our Unsung History, a podcast from WJCT Public Media.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.